So what's up, Flip Factor family? It's Michael Green with the Flip Factor podcast, the #1 podcast dedicated to teaching you how to flip less houses, make more money, so you can have the freedom to do whatever the F you want. Today, I'm going to be talking about why goal setting is a horrible flipping strategy with Delante Desouza, the Grim Reaper of goal setting. Welcome, Delante. Do you like your new nickname?
Yeah, actually, because I don't know, it makes me feel powerful.
Yes. Well, if you can't be God, you could be the Grim Reaper. I feel like it's, one and the same. Hey, either way, if people mess with Delante, you're going to get Grim Reaped on. So don't be sending any crazy golds to him. So first of all, it's a little bit controversial, right? When we say gold setting is a horrible idea for house flipping, but I promise you by the end of this, we're going to dive in. We're going to talk about it. I believe that we'll be able to persuade you and get you over to our side of the fence. And really, we're just sharing with you what we've learned over the years. It's definitely, we have a really good point because I've set goals for years and it wasn't highly effective. It made me focus on the wrong things. So today, I promise you, we're going to get to a conclusion and I'm hoping that I'll be able to shift your thinking on this a little bit. For a good reason, obviously. So you can start getting more results, making more money, having more freedom to go do all the fun stuff out there. So real quick, before we get jumped, I always have some announcements. I'll make them super fast so we can get right into the content. As everyone knows, we have the Real Estate Flip Factor 10X Facebook group. It's a group where we share a lot of cool stuff. It's free. Anyone listening to this, I would love you to join because obviously the more people we get in, the better ideas we're sharing, the better the community is. And that's really the value in the community is all the cool stuff that we share, contacts, resources, ideas, and that's all it really is in there. Nothing crazy going on. We're not selling anything in there. Totally free. It's going to remain free. I don't have any expectations of trying to make it a paid group, but I'll tell you what, it has the quality of a paid group because there's a lot of great value in there. However, I'm keeping it free because I can do that because I'm not, well, I guess I'm the Grim Reaper of paid Facebook groups where he's the Grim Reaper of gold setting. So we all have to be the Grim Reaper of something. I'm usually the Grim Reaper of deals. So, people come to me and like, I have this really amazing deal, Mike, and oh my God, it's so great. And then I look at it and I'm like, you missed 18 things and it's actually not a good deal. And I'm so sorry. And I have to pull out my sickle and then just cut the deal in half and be like, sorry, man, go back to the drawing board. I'm so sorry. But I don't want them to lose money, right? Everything's I'm doing it from a good place, obviously, even though I am killing the deal. And also we coach. So, and when we say coach, we don't actually believe in coaching. I believe that because, coaches for many years weren't great for me because they really would just teach me stuff and then I had to go figure it out. But what we do a little bit different here is we help people implement solutions to their problems. So I really consider myself a fixer. What I'm able to do is help people go into their business, help them get a really strong plan together, figure out what they're missing, and get them really focused on what matters. And it's what I do in my business every day. Me and Delante, we're always focusing on how to make the business better, focusing on the right things so we can get better results, more freedom, and make more money. If you're interested in talking to me about working with me, you can just send an email to mike@theflipfactor.net. That's the best way to get a hold of me. And from there, let's jump into the content. Delante, welcome again. And let's start talking a little bit about why you believe that goal setting is a horrible idea.
So, yeah, we had this conversation, a couple of times, and I see this on like our Facebook group, other house flipping investor groups and stuff like that. So here's the thing, right? It's always good for us to have goals. A lot of times when we have goals, we don't really think about what it takes to implement those goals, right? We try to like build this skyscraper of a business or this skyscraper of an idea without really breaking down what it takes to do that. So we're kind of left with this analysis paralysis kind of feeling. I know for me personally, when I first started to research like real estate and started to figure out, what house flipping was, I was one of those people that was on Bigger Pockets, just kind of scrolling through, just sitting in the background in the shadows for like 3 months. And I had like this huge like dream of owning real estate and being like this super landlord with like 200,000 properties. I didn't even know what a loan was. Like I didn't even know what like interest and points were. So I was just stuck, right? It was like trying to take on this big task and have all these huge goals without really knowing what actions to take to get there.
That's great feedback. And so what did you find by making the goal so big? What do you feel like that did for you? Or what do you feel like the consequence of that was?
I feel like it left me like paralyzed, like it left me anxious. It's kind of like setting yourself up to go against a huge monster that you have to fight against, or like some huge bully, and you haven't been in the gym. So you're just kind of like scared because you don't know like if you're going to win or not. You're just kind of setting yourself up for more than you can handle.
Yeah, it's like, hey, I'm going to go fight the biggest guy at the school, but I lost the last 3 fights against my little sister. So I'm not so sure I'm up for this. I don't know if it's going to work out, right? 100%, exactly. Man. I get where you're coming from. It totally makes sense. And listen, I think that goals can sometimes be an excuse not to do anything. And let me explain that. It sounds crazy when I say these things, but a lot of times I see people set goals that are so big that it's almost like self-sabotage. You're setting a goal that's so unobtainable that initially, at least, now maybe long-term, 30 years from now, totally they could do it. But, the key for me is figuring out what am I going to do in the next week that's going to drive my business forward and get me results and start to show me, start to create some momentum for me in the results category. So I don't necessarily believe in goals, and we can call these micro goals if you want, because maybe that's a better word for them. But I believe in setting goals that are going to be small or just setting actions that are going to move my business forward. So when I hear of goals, I'm always hearing people come to me like, Mike, I need 1,000 units. And I'm like, okay, perfect. What's the first step to 1,000 units? Like, what would be that first action step? So I really like, and we'll use the word action steps because that's what we use in our business. We're always just looking for like, this week, what can I do? What is the most important thing I can do to move my business forward? Now, if you're new to flipping, what's the most important thing you can do in the next 7 days that's actionable, that's going to move you closer to doing your first deal? Right? Having clarity. What is that first deal? Is it a rental empire? Is it a flip for now because you need some income? Is it a wholesale deal because you're broke and you want to kind of just, try to pick up some quick cash? Any of those three work, and all three of those make money and are very great businesses. And lots of times we might have to wholesale and flip before we can get into building that, great rental portfolio. But having some clarity is the first thing. I don't necessarily believe in these big goals that just take you and just confuse you. Tony Robbins talks about this, and he says that, whenever you take something really big, you got to chunk it down into bite-sized pieces, the same way you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. And when we set goals, I'm always seeing people set goals that are just crazy goals. And again, I'm not against big, crazy goals, but I feel like when I've seen people fail, it's also, I've seen them have a really crazy goal attached, and they were just like going to that big goal with no understanding of the first 20 steps of the 1,000-step journey that they're going to take. And for me, if you got to take us 1,000 steps to get to the end of this journey, I want to figure out what are the first 10 to first 20. So this is more bite-sized for me. And how could I do one of those a week for the next 20 weeks? So for me, action steps is really a big thing that I change. So that's probably personal feedback on this. And I have seen people use goals. Now, there's two trains of thoughts, right? I've heard people say, hey, don't make your goals too small because you won't challenge yourself and you won't get anything going, right? Or you'll always underperform. My belief, when you've never done this before and you're completely new to the business, I would say even setting a small goal that you knew you could accomplish would be a very positive win in the right direction. Just spending something very simple and small and then compounding those. So I believe setting like action steps and compounding of the action steps will lead to a goal. And then you end up getting there. But what happens ultimately when you do the first 20 steps of a 1,000-step journey, right, your action steps, you're going to find that the goal you set might be very different even just 20 steps later. So when we try to anticipate out a 30 or 20-year goal, it's so far out that it's very hard for us to even know, like, is that what we'd even want in 20 years? Once we actually learn the business, will we find, like, so for me, I thought I was going to be a big landlord also, 1 million units. And, I wasn't thinking small like Delante with 200,000 units. Like I was thinking big time, like 1 million to 2 million units, like really big time. But I settled for a few. So I settled for a couple. But what I realized is that I actually enjoy flipping and I don't enjoy landlording as much. Now, I am building a portfolio right now, but, my thing has always been that I actually like flipping. I like making money now. And I've automated my flipping business in a way where it's about as passive as any rental business that most people own. I don't really work in it that much because I've put great systems together. So for me, it's very much like owning a rental portfolio. It constantly just keeps providing cash for me, providing lifestyle, allowing me to do these podcasts and do all these other cool things. And I love that. Now that I've been doing it for a while, however, I am looking for more long-term wealth, generational wealth that I could build with rentals. So for me, I would have totally told you, if you'd asked me in the first 6 months I was in this business, I would have been like, dude, I'm going to be a big landlord. Now, a couple years later, my thoughts shift. So this is the reason, you can set long-term goals, but when it really comes down to it, it's all about the action steps you're going to take in the next 7 to 30 days that are going to move you in the right direction so that you don't get where Delante was and where I was for 6 years. How long were you in that analysis paralysis zone where you were just thinking through things? How many years would you say that was?
I would say I started researching into real estate probably junior year of college, and I didn't do anything about it until January of 2017. So I would say about a year and a half.
Yeah, so like a year and a half. And I was in the stage for like 6 years because I'm even more analytical. But point is getting in and doing those action steps is the key. And action steps, if you had someone helping you with a clear, what is the first few things I should be doing that's going to create momentum, that's going to get me moving in the right direction, then you're going to start making a lot of money. And that's my big thing we've been focusing on as a company, as a, culture within our coaching, is really just getting focused, becoming the Michael Phelps of whatever part of real estate you're going to be in. If you decide you want to be a wholesaler, a landlord, a flipper, flipper, whatever that is, I want you to be the best at that. And when you become the best at it and you feel like I'm really good at this and I am proficient at this, then decide if you want to add rentals on. So for me, I feel like I've gotten to that point where it comes out, I'm a very good flipper. I'm able to, command results and get the results I want. When things don't go the way I want, which is like, I'm not perfect, I'm human. So sometimes my flips don't go perfect. I have really good systems to know what's not going well. And I have the ability to go and fix those things over a 3 to 6 month period and get everything back on track. So I feel in control of that business. Now that I feel in control of that business, I'm ready to take on being a landlord at a high level. And, and obviously I've got a lot more knowledge than most people because I did own 30 properties outright, for about 7 years, just a few years ago. I sold those off when I went on my own to start my own business. And now I'm starting some new ones. And so, and I've also made good friends with some really awesome people who do rentals, and they've given me some great advice and been my mentors and have helped me. So I'm one of those guys who likes to get all the information before I do the first thing. So, I've got some experience with this. I have a very new plan. My new plan in building rentals is to really become the Michael Phelps of rentals when I decide I want to do it. But I've not fully committed to it yet because I'm still working on being the Michael Phelps of house flipping. So whatever you decide you want to do, get focused, because every time I talk to people and they're like, hey, I'm going to do like 18 different things. Well, the old adage, if we serve a bunch of masters, we serve no one, right? That's just the reality of it. No one's going to be great at all 5 things. No one's going to be the best subject to person if they're also doing rentals and wholesale and doing everything else. At best, you might be proficient, you might be enough to make some money, but will you ever be making the top dollar of that industry? Where I'm working on is becoming like one of the top dollar earners when it comes to like flipping a house. $250,000 house. What is the maximum money I can make on that house? Within reason, that I'm really crushing it. What is the fastest I can get it done? What is the most efficient I can get the work done so that I'm not spending more money? So that way I can increase profits, right? It's all about selling it for the most money, buying it as cheap as possible, getting the work done as affordably as you can, and then making the house turn out as beautiful as possible. Nailing all those things, then see, that for me is focus. So that's why I'm not a big fan of goals right now, because goals would constantly make me focus on the wrong thing. One little quick story that I'll give you as a goal that I had many years ago, and I've learned from this goal, was I had a goal to flip, 100 houses a year. Eventually, I reached that goal because I set that goal and I reached it. It took me about 6 years to get to that. And as I got to the 6 years, I realized that, okay, I'm working my butt off, got tons of employees, tons of overhead. A lot of people were helping me and supporting me to that goal, and it cost money. It costs money to have all those people. It costs money to market, to keep the leads coming in. And for me, what I realized when I set the goal of, volume, I ended up focusing on volume at the cost of profits and margins. And now in the last 3 years, where I've made a shift is now I don't care how much volume I do. I literally traveled the country about 3 years ago. Started traveling the country 3 years ago. And over the last couple of years, I've been really studying some high performance house flippers. And there's a common denominator between all of them. And that one common denominator is they don't care if they do 5 houses a year or 50 houses a year. It really doesn't matter to them. It's all about profitability. One of the people I met only did 5 houses a year. He was in San Francisco. I spent a lot of time with that person. He was making on average $150K a house on 5 houses a year. So it's a very desirable business. I've also met people doing 300 houses a year that were making the same profit in their pocket each year as the person doing 5. So the question mark for you is like, volume is not that important. It's really all about profit. But we always assume if we do more volume, we'll have more profit. And often if our focus is volume, we end up having less profit because we start bringing in, we always start reinvesting our profits into building and scaling instead of being more profitable. So for me, in the last 3 years, what I've accomplished is I've taken my business. I do a lot less flips now. Each of those flips are doubled in income over the last 3 years. So with averaging about 18K, I'm now averaging 37K a house now. So it's a really big difference in averages. I am doing a lot less houses, obviously, but I don't need to do as many houses because of the money I'm making. So when I set a goal of volume, I got exactly what I wanted. And so I don't really like goal setting as much. Now, every day I just work on how can I be the most efficient house flipper possible, knowing that that's going to really start to put together some great numbers for me. And it has done amazing things ever since that's been my focus. Now, with that being said, once we got all these action steps and we're getting action and we've actually seen some data come in of a year's work, then we can start setting some goals based on what's actually happened. That way the goals would be like, hey, this year I did 200K in income based on, and I averaged 30K a house. Maybe next year I want to do the same, let's say 15 houses, but I want to take my 30K a house up to 35K a house so I can increase my income. See, that's something we can control. That's something we could focus on. And then the goal would actually drive the action steps. So in this scenario, goal setting would be very good, but it would be goal setting based on data you've already produced, not goal setting based on dreams. Because you feel like some goals are based on like a dream of what I would like.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's how 95% of investors start out. When we first get into real estate, we're like, oh, I dream of, sitting back on the beach and like drinking I don't know, a pina colada while my real estate passive income is coming in every month and like, paying for my vacation. Of course, once you get into the game and you're like a little more knowledgeable, you realize that is far from the case. But yeah, I think you touched on a lot of good points there. And I think one of the things I kind of want to backtrack on and talk about, pretty much highlight, is number one actionable advice we could give to someone instead of setting goals is to set mini goals, is what you coined it as. And I think that's a really good way to put it, because mini goals allow you to get the ball rolling. And I think the main issue that both of us were facing when we first started thinking about getting into the business was just kicking the ball and giving it some momentum. It doesn't matter if the ball's going 5 miles per hour or 50 miles per hour, as long as it's, like you said, moving your business forward. And I think that's the main key. Like, if you can go back and ask yourself, over the past 30 days, did you do something productive every day, no matter whether it was for 5 minutes or 50 minutes, that moved your business forward? If you did, you're taking the right steps. If not, let's go back and evaluate what you did. So I think that's huge, man. You don't have to build Rome in one day, as they say, but
Rome wasn't built in one day, as they
there
say,
you go.
right? Yeah, it takes a long time. I mean, someone told me that before. One of my coaches, when I was like very impatient, he's like, Rome wasn't built in a day. Obviously, it wasn't. It makes sense. It didn't fall in a day either. But
Yeah.
so, it took quite a while. And when you really think about this, then let's clarify one thing that I want to add on to this too, that we were talking about yesterday and I was thinking about in the last week, is when we talk about getting stuff done that's going to move the business forward, there is a difference between like studying and education and implementation, right? So for me, what we've been focused on is implementing and doing, because all day long I can read books about how to be a better house flipper, but where things really start to accomplish, where I start to accomplish things and get good feedback is when I go out and do. Now, I love the balance of a little education and then rapidly implementing what I'm learning. That's been my secret to success. So when we talk about getting out, doing what we call these mini goals or / action steps, we want to make sure we're out there doing things. The action step couldn't be like read 18 books on house flipping, right? It literally could be more like, hey, go do this one thing that's going to probably tell me more than the 18 books would be, right? What is the rapid implementation of it? 18 books is going to take a long time. That is not rapid implementation. It is implementation, just really slow. And then educating yourself and learning and all that's good. But at the same time, action, it has to be balanced out with action and taking and doing things. Now, if you're new, I'm always going to give you the advice that when I say do stuff and take action, I'm not telling you to go wipe out your IRA and put it into the first bad deal you find. It might be take the action of hire a coach, go to a meetup, find someone who can guide you in this business in some way, and then some way to protect your money when you're investing it. That might be step one. Step two might be putting a really strong plan on a piece of paper. And I always believe great plans are not like 19 pages long and complicated. They're like 1 page, simple. I'm going to get a coach. I'm going to buy my first house in the next 6 months. This house is going to be a flip. It's going to be, at this price point, 200 to 250 ARV. I'm going to be purchasing it for this ballpark with this much work. Here's how I'm going to find my contractors. Here's how I'm going to project manage everything. It just could be 1 sentence items just so you start getting some clarity to those answers. Once you get clarity to those answers, then you have the confidence to move forward. But key is you're doing something, like you're going out and you're talking to people, you're getting information, you're learning, you're researching, but you're not researching from books. Knowing how to do something. I knew so many people that could tell you every great thing about house flipping and they suck at it. Like they could have the most intelligent conversation about house flipping, but cannot implement it one bit. And most of those guys become coaches, unfortunately. I know that's, everyone says that when I'll have an ad out and I'll get some trolls on there like, well, you must be, teaching because you're not doing and you suck at doing. And I'm thinking like, no, actually, I'm different than most. I really do mostly. And I teach just to be able to do better. Part of teaching is improving my ability to do. Now, most people are teaching because they never really got the doing piece down and it was super complicated. Because there's just people out there that have learned all the right things to say. They've read so many books. They're so educated on paper, but they don't actually have any real experience behind it. So your job is to get educated on paper quickly and then get out there and get some experience, right? Get out there, like partner up with someone, figure out what you got to do, anything that it takes for you to gain that experience, because experience is better, right? Experience is going to debunk half this stuff that you're reading in books and you're reading on forums, because most of that stuff is based on lack of experience and it's based on ideas. They're like, this would be a cool idea. Let me tell someone. And then people read it and they're like, yeah, that's a cool idea. But no one has tested the idea. So for me, I'm very careful that I never talk about anything on this podcast or teach anything to my students that I haven't already put into my business and tried out and tested for at least 3 to 6 months. And I have sufficient data to say that what I'm teaching or I'm personally doing is actually effective. Because you know how many ideas I try in my business, they don't work? Yeah, it's all the time. That's research and development. That's that section of my business where I don't get things right always. So I don't want to go out and just tell people something until I've actually tested it and seen it work. So I want you to take on that same mindset that, hey, we're going to do a little research, then we're going to go out and field test things and see how they work. And then when you're doing that, now you're not focused on, I'm going to get 1 million rental properties or flip 200 houses a year. You start focusing on, I'm just going to become better at flipping houses and better at what it takes to be, I'm going to transform into the person necessary to be a great house flipper or a wholesaler or a landlord, whatever you choose. But you need to figure out, who do you need to become? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I was just thinking back on it. It's kind of sad to see like so many people post about, I really want to be in this business and I'm doing A, B, C, X, Y, Z, but I'm just not seeing the results. When you look at it and you break down what they're doing all of the things that don't push the needle forward and don't move them forward. They're like, I studied I don't know, how to send direct mail, and I know it costs $1.20 to send this kind of mail, but I haven't bought a list yet. And I don't know how to filter a list. And I don't know how to gauge motivation. Well, you thought you were busy, but your activities brought in $0 to your bank account. So let's talk about what really needs to be done. Let's go out there. Let's try. Don't break the bank, like you said, but let's try something, get some feedback from, your results, and then analyze it. Then go back out, try it again, analyze, and then make it a habit of this sort of hybrid approach of going out, analyzing, and then taking action. And then I think your goals will come from there, because like you said, your goals can change in a matter of months or years, depending on the experience and, the actions that you take. So why set this huge tower of a goal that you're not even 100% sure you want to pursue?
Yeah, that's the exact reason and name of this podcast. That's how people can destroy their house flipping business, when they create unobtainable goals at this moment. And then it takes 5 years to even get any kind of win. Right? We have to have wins in order to stick with things. So when we start thinking about micro goals, or we start thinking about action steps, it allows us to get wins daily, weekly, monthly, that we can really, tie to. Because when subconsciously and emotionally, unconsciously, when we're getting wins, we start to gain confidence. And we gain confidence, we tend to follow through with stuff. If you ever felt like, why don't I follow through with things? Most of the time it's based on your lack of confidence in that thing you're not following through with. And we all have a fear of unknown. We have a fear of failure. And a lot of those things will just kind of link us back to just not doing anything. So I love what you said too, Delante, and I want to kind of add to that when you're talking about making money is the key, right? If we had to say one focus of a goal that I would be down with, and I'd be like, all right, I support that goal. If you're new, it's making money, right? It's like, what is the fastest way for me to put a check in my bank account? I don't care what size it is, whether it's 2,000, 10,000, 20,000, whatever it is. What's the fastest way to do that? Because when you get money in your bank account, it's basically how you determine whether you've won or not and whether your system works. The problem when people set goals of I'm going to build, a portfolio of 20 houses. I've seen people build a portfolio of 20 houses that weren't really all that good. They weren't even really cash flowing. Market took a little bit of turn or a dip, and next thing you know, they're over leveraged into 20 houses, and they got 5 years of their life into it. And the reason they never know, with rentals, it's tough to know because you don't get instant feedback. A lot of the wealth in rentals is built over long periods of time. So you're not getting quick, instant feedback with it. The fastest feedback you obviously would get would be a wholesale deal. You go out, you work, you get a house under contract, you sell it in a couple of weeks. So within a month or two, you could get feedback whether what you're doing is working or not. And rehabs are usually going to be about 4 to 6 months of that, getting that feedback. Rentals are usually 5 to 10 years of getting that feedback. So I've really, in any business, believe that it should have a way of getting getting fast feedback to whether you're actually making money or not. So if anyone's like, I've been doing this 2 years, the first question I'm gonna have is like, tell me about the checks you've cashed and where they came from, because I want to know, right? Where's the money coming from? What has been the thing that has been like producing all your money? And in reality is most people have a goal or a really big goal or plan that is completely focused on all the activities that did not make them money. And for whatever reason, the areas where they have made money, what's been paying the bills, isn't as sexy, isn't as fancy, or isn't as cool as the other areas. So they almost do that, but they don't really pay attention to it. They don't focus on it. And they're not trying to become the Michael Phelps of where your checks are coming from. And in real estate, everything comes back to where's the money coming from? Where are you making money? If you did 10 activities, you made money on one, the fastest way to scale your business up, the fastest way to, quit your job and start making money and really making this a real living would be for you to fire the 9 things that didn't make you money and then double, triple, quadruple down on the one thing that got the checks in. Like, legitimately just like, I'm going to become like twice as good. If I was doing this without like 1/9 of a focus on it, how great would I be if I put all my focus to it?
I 100% agree. So if you had to, I know this is going to be a hard question, Mike, but based on everything we talked about in this whole podcast episode, if you had to wrap it up all into one sound piece of advice, what would you say to listeners who have huge lists of goals that they want to accomplish in house flipping? What advice would you give them?
I'm going to go to the advice I would give. If you have a whole huge list of goals, I would say break it down to some action steps you could take today. Make sure those action steps are going to be tied to income that can be created, because without income, you cannot run a business. Income is the blood of a business, and without blood going to your heart, you have heart attack, right? You end up having an event, you end up having a stroke, a heart attack, you end up dying. Like any business, if there's no money coming in, it will not last. So you do have to have cash flow. So make sure that it's tied to that. And other goals, put them to the side, make them like, just put them to the side for now. And let's focus on what's making me money and what's going to get me some wins. The wins for me are cashing checks. If I have a new acquisitions person and they can cash a check in 2 or 3 weeks, I've hit a home run. I've done a great job. I now know mentally they know that this works, right? And that's what I'm trying to accomplish. I want to know that. And I think when you're new, you need to know that. That's the advice for a newer investor. I also want to give advice because some of the people listening are actually, doing a decent amount of houses. For anyone who's doing a decent amount, often they're usually into multiple things. So I would just go back and look at your last year and look at what your best income producers were, and everything outside of that that's been eating your time but not really producing any real income. Be man enough, right? Be like bold enough to fire it. And you can be woman enough too, because some women are pretty gangster also. But also, so be bold enough is the best word for it. Be bold enough to fire the things that are eating your time but aren't producing the right amounts of income. What is that in your business that's driving your business down? That's a big part of what I do so differently than most people. I don't really coach and say, here's some, cool tricks you've never heard of. I really walk into people's businesses and I deep dive into it and I figure out like what's dragging them down. Like what are the holes in the boat that we need to fill so the boat won't sink on its long mission across the sea. We need to make sure that that boat is going to be, seaworthy and it's going to make it. And most businesses, house flipping businesses, die in like 3 to 5 years. And the reason why is that so many people have holes in their boats and they just don't know how to identify them, and they're not bold enough to get rid of them and plug them, because that often means we got to let some people go and we got to fire some things, some beliefs or dreams that we had that aren't working out, so that we can focus on the dreams that are working out, the dreams that are producing checks. So that's my advice for people who are doing the big stuff, right? Who are already in this business, already actively going. That could be 5 houses a year, but you have a little bit of a track record. You have a little bit of a history. It's the first place to look is your history and figure out like, where's my money coming from? And if you have not produced a bunch of money on a few things that you feel are like these new cool ideas that are going to be really big in the future, like remember, you have to eat today. The future is amazing, but we got to have enough money to eat today to make it to the future. So first step is always survival, making sure your business can survive and it has a foundational income it can survive on. Once you get that foundational income honed in, then you can take like a certain amount of money and you can put it towards the things that are a little more long-term, like rentals or building portfolios or getting into new ideas, maybe like lease options, owner finance, notes, whatever it is you want to do, right? Figure out where your money's coming from, and then the other secondary things, put them on the side. When I say fire them, I just mean, how about we just lay them off for a while and we'll bring them back later when the time's right.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense.
Well, awesome. So, Delante, I'm going to let you do this today. We're going to do what we call weekly, the tip to the top. Delante was supposed to say it in an Irish accent, but I feel like he has. I can give it to him, Delante.
The Irish one? Oh, the Irish one's bad.
No, not the Irish one. Delante decided against Irish because it tipped to the top. It felt like tip to the top, but he's now decided that it has to be a pirate accent. So Let's go for it, man. I'm going to let you do it in pirate. Let's see how it works.
Arg, tip to the top.
Okay. Well, now you have to give them the tips at the top. So from this episode, Delante, what do you think is one of the biggest tips you took away for the audience that they can use in their business in the next 7 to 30 days and would be really relevant to getting them money, right? Because we got to make some money. That's
Yeah.
how the world drives.
Today's tip to the top would be for me, just go out and make something happen. Like, stop planning, stop making these goals, like, stop writing stuff down and then just thinking about it and trying to revise the plan for 6 years. Like, go out, put the notebook down, go buy some paper from, I don't know, Office Depot. Take a list of 10 houses that you've seen that look like they're abandoned. Write the addresses down. Look up the owner name on SDAT if you're in Maryland or wherever you are, and just write them a letter. Say, hey, I'm looking to buy your house. It's not like that's like the ultimate strategy, right? But that's going to break the habit of this constant goal building, but not taking action. Like, just go out and take minimal action, and then the action will build over time. Yeah, my tip is like, just go out and do something today. Go out and take a physical action today, no matter whether it's sending a single letter or hanging one bandit sign. Just start to psychologically introduce taking action into your schedule.
Dude, great tip to the top. I love that. I will tell, and I can confirm with Delante that the hardest thing to do is hang the first bandit sign. The hardest thing to do is to send the first letter. Hardest thing to do is to go see the first house and write it on paper. Once you get out there, you're going to find that, like, hey, I'm going to go hang one bandit sign. You're going to be like, let me hang 10 while I'm out here. I'm out here doing it. You start gaining momentum. I will absolutely agree with you. So great tip. Thank you, Delante. That's awesome. So, man, awesome having you on the show. Obviously, Delante's on here. He's assistant coach with my company. So we bring him on because he brings a fresh perspective. He's newer to the game. I've been doing it so long that sometimes I forget how it is to be in the struggle. You know, I am currently in the struggle. If you're doing a bunch of houses, I have a very relevant struggle. But if you've never done a deal, my struggle can be a little different because my struggle is about how to grow profits, be more awesome, have more freedom, do more cool stuff, so it's very relevant to anyone who's flipping 5 to 10 to, up to a couple hundred houses a year. We're going to have a very similar struggle. But Delante represents the newbie. He represents the newbie, like the struggle, get out and do the one bandit sign. So awesome advice, dude. Thank you so much for that. He will be back. As you know, he'll be on many other episodes. So I appreciate you being on there. So again, thank you, Flip Factor family, for joining us. This is Michael Green, and my work is done. Yours has just begun. Get out and take some action. Take the tip of the top to the
top.
Whatever it was. I'm not even sure you went with this accent, but first was like a pirate, and then it was Irish, and then that sounded a little Asian even. I'm not sure. But we're working it out. Be patient with us. We're going to get this down. We're going to stick with it. Great advice, though. That tip to the top was super stuff. So thank you so much, Delante, and we'll talk again soon, man. Listeners, have a great week. Take some action and jump right into it. See you guys.